morning. My name is Alex Thaxton, and my thesis is on the overabundance of law in America. America has always been a nation of laws. From the Plymouth Colony laws in 1636 to today's United States Code, America has continuously sought to serve justice to its citizens. But when the sheer amount of laws has managed to ruin innocent people's lives, is justice truly America's objective? God has placed government and society to protect his people and give them an earthly code in which they can follow. But as the nation has progressed, it has slowly stopped advocating for what is right. Government officials no longer serve as protectors that citizens respect, and their goals are far from what they should be as leaders of the nation. The reason for their lack of governing is simply that there is too much to govern. The government cannot keep up with the growing amount of new law, so how should citizens expect them to keep up with the issue of justice? The most profound example of unjust law is the story of Aaron Swartz. Known from a young age by friends and family as a child prodigy, he is most commonly known as one of the co-founders of Reddit. Being a high schooler in the early 2000s, he found himself to be heavily interested in the web and even more so in coding, and spent most of his time participating in online groups and contributing to open source projects, which helped him get more familiar with how the internet worked. Unlike other students his age, by the age of 14, Aaron was working alongside adults on a system called RSS, and through RSS, he gained a reputation that would help open doors to future collaborations. Being interested in the internet, he also found himself to be interested in copyright, and through Harvard law professor Lawrence Lessig, he was invited to attend the ruling of Eldred versus Ashcroft, a case where Congress extended copyright terms to all authors. This experience was the turning point in his life. Being only a teenager, Aaron was viewed as an equal among the adults he worked with, and was given an opportunity to put his skills into action through a nonprofit organization called Creative Commons. Creative Commons helped Aaron learn to work at the intersection of law, technology, and public policy, which later helped him advocate for public access to academic research. Aaron believed that government documents should be made public and spent the next several years working towards that goal. With his time that he spent at Harvard, it allowed him to have access to JSTOR. In the fall of 2005, Paul Graham founded the startup accelerator that would later fund Reddit called Y Combinator. Aaron applied to Y Combinator with a project called Infogami, and after looking at what Aaron had to offer, Graham accepted him and made him a mentor. Through Paul Graham, Aaron met Alexis Ohanian and Steve Huffman and merged projects with them, which ultimately created Reddit. Reddit gave Aaron the independence that allowed him to spend years building Open Library and other open access projects. Aaron believed that government documents should be made public and spent the next several years working towards that goal. With his time that he spent at Harvard, it allowed him to have access to JSTOR, a large digital library that had access to academic articles, historical documents, and thousands of research journals, all of which Aaron believed should be made public. In the fall of 2010, Aaron downloaded almost 2.7 million pages of documents, which flagged both MIT and JSTOR and even got the attention of the FBI. By early January of 2011, Aaron's computer that had been plugged into the MIT network had been found in an unlocked supply closet. But instead of waiting for Aaron to return or unplugging his computer, authorities set up cameras to gain evidence and start a court case. After reviewing the footage, Aaron was detained and arrested on the MIT campus and was charged in federal court shortly afterward. Originally, Aaron was charged with 4 felony counts, but it was later changed to 13 felony counts because prosecutors wanted to expand the case. Aaron was given the option to plead guilty to the 13 felony counts, or he could reject the plea and go to trial. Aaron never pleaded guilty, and he never went to trial. On January 11th of 2013, he died by suicide, and the charges were dropped. After his death, his story gained attention, transforming him into a symbol of how the law can shape and sometimes shatter a life. What good is the law if the people it is meant to protect are unaware of it and cannot understand it? Most Americans believe that law exists to keep society safe, orderly, and fair. From the founding of the United States, the legal system was designed to protect individual rights and limit the abuse of power. However, as the number of laws has steadily increased over time, many citizens have begun to feel overwhelmed rather than protected. Rather than guiding citizens clearly, the legal system has become so complex that it often creates confusion instead of understanding. For most people, the law is something they rarely think about unless it directly affects them. People assume that if they act responsibly, they will not face any legal trouble. However, this assumption no longer holds true in a society where law is a part of daily life. From running a small business to organizing a community event, citizens are expected to obey rules that are often unclear or difficult to access. This growing gap between lawmakers and the public raises serious concerns about fairness and responsibility in a democratic system. The expectation that citizens must know and obey every law is unrealistic when the legal system has become so complex. Many laws are written in technical language that require legal training to understand. As a result, citizens may unknowingly violate laws despite having no intent to do so. This does not suggest that citizens are careless or irresponsible, but rather it highlights a system that has grown beyond the public's ability to reasonably follow what is meant to serve as protection. This creates misunderstanding, frustration, and distrust in the legal system. The growth of the American legal system did not happen all at once. In the early years of the United States, laws were fewer and written in ways that the ordinary person could understand. The Founding Fathers feared that excess government control could threaten individual freedom. Documents such as the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were written to limit government power and protect citizens from overreach. Laws were meant to be based on common sense. As the country grew in population and faced new challenges, lawmakers began creating new laws to address those changes. Industrialization, population growth, and technological advancement made regulation necessary. However, lawmakers rarely removed old laws when creating new ones. Over time, the legal system grew faster than people could keep up with. Today, federal, state, and local governments create thousands of laws and regulations, making the legal system extremely large and difficult to navigate. Even though many of these laws are created with good intentions, the sheer number of them has made it difficult for citizens to know what is legal and what is not, placing the ordinary person at a disadvantage. This raises concerns about whether the law still serves as a helpful guide for behavior or whether it has become too complicated to follow. This concern is supported by the policy research from the Heritage Foundation, which has warned about the overcriminalization of American law. According to the Heritage Foundation, the rapid expansion of criminal law has created a system so large and complicated that ordinary citizens can violate laws during everyday activities unknowingly. Many criminal laws no longer require clear criminal intent, allowing prosecutors to charge individuals over harmless actions. Legal scholars and judges have also raised concerns about the overwhelming number of laws in America. Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch discusses this issue in his book Overruled, where he explains that the expansion of laws has made it difficult for citizens to follow them. Gorsuch argues that when laws become complex or too numerous, justice becomes unfair and unpredictable. Instead of helping people know right from wrong, the law can turn into a trap for those who are simply trying to live their lives. When citizens cannot reasonably predict the legal consequences of an action, trust in the legal system begins to weaken. According to Gorsuch, this problem becomes especially dangerous when citizens are expected to obey all laws, even when those laws can be unclear or hidden within layers of regulation. His argument shows that the overabundance of law threatens the idea that the legal system should be fair, understandable, and accessible to everyone. One of the most interesting examples Neil Gorsuch uses in his book, Overruled, involves a commercial fisherman named John Yates. During a routine inspection in the Gulf of Mexico, an officer found that Yates had caught several red grouper that were slightly undersized. The officer ordered Yates to keep the fish so that they could be measured again later, but after being measured for the second time, the officer left, seemingly dismissing the situation. Yates would not hear from authorities again. That is, until years later when he was charged under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, a law originally created to prevent corporate executives from destroying financial records during an investigation. Prosecutors argued that the fish counted as tangible objects, meaning Yates had committed a serious federal crime. Cases like this show how overly broad laws could be misused against ordinary citizens. A law originally created to punish large corporations was stretched beyond its original intent and applied to an ordinary fisherman, creating an outcome that many view as unreasonable. As Gorsuch argues, when laws are used in ways they were never intended, they stop promoting justice and instead create unfair consequences. This example highlights the dangers of laws that are written without clear limitations. Cases like the one involving John Yates are not rare, but they reflect a broader issue that affect everyday Americans. When laws are overly complex or excessively enforced, citizens can face serious consequences for harmless actions. One well-known example of this is children being forced to shut down lemonade stands due to a lack of a proper permit or license. In Portland, Oregon, a 7-year-old girl was required to close her lemonade stand due to not having a food handler's license or a temporary restaurant permit. Situations like this show how the law created for public safety can be used in ways that ignore common sense. Instead of teaching children responsibility or entrepreneurship, the use of these regulations can send the message that even innocent actions can lead to punishment. This demonstrates how the overabundance of law can discourage community involvement, emphasizing strict enforcement over fairness. When the law discourages participation instead of promoting responsibility, they fail to serve the public. Despite these problems, it's important to understand that law itself is not the issue. Laws are necessary to maintain order, protect rights, and ensure fairness in society. When written clearly and applied correctly, laws can bring about positive change and improve the lives of citizens. Throughout American history, certain laws have successfully addressed major social issues and protected vulnerable groups. These examples show that the existence of law is not the problem, but rather how much law exists and how it is enforced. By examining laws that were used as intended, it becomes possible to understand what effective lawmaking looks like. One of the strongest examples of effective lawmaking is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law was created to address the clear and widespread injustice, especially in public places, workplaces, and schools. Unlike overly complex or broad laws, the Civil Rights Act served a specific purpose and had clear goals: to protect equal rights and end segregation. Because the law was written in a clear and focused way, citizens understood what behavior was no longer acceptable, and the government had clear authority to enforce it. As a result, the law brought about meaningful change in society and helped protect millions of Americans from discrimination. Effective laws are not only found at the national level, but they are also found at the local level as well. In Shreveport, attorney Catherine Smitherman focused to support legislation that helped children with severe disabilities receive necessary medical services. Motivated by her own experiences as a parent, Smitherman noticed gaps in existing laws that made it difficult for families to receive necessary medical care. Rather than creating overly broad or confusing laws, she focused on laws that addressed urgent needs. One example of this effective lawmaking is Louisiana's adoption of the TEFRA Medicaid option. The TEFRA Act allows children with severe disabilities to receive medical benefits based on their needs rather than their parents' income. According to a report by KTBS, families across Louisiana had spent years battling insurance companies and state agencies to receive coverage for their children that required around-the-clock care. The TEFRA bill was passed unanimously and was signed into law, helping families receive vital medical services and prevent many from facing financial hardship. Unlike overly complex or poorly applied laws, the TEFRA Act clearly states its purpose and provides a focused solution. Families could easily understand who qualified and how the law would help them. Smitherman's involvement shows that when laws focus on clear goals and have real people in mind, the law can help people instead of cause stress, confusion, or harm. Lawmakers continue to create laws even when the legal system is already overwhelming. One main reason is fear of liabilities, as lawmakers often believe that creating new laws can avoid future problems and prevent them from being criticized. Another reason is political pressure. Politicians may feel the need to appear active or productive by constantly coming up with new legislation. In addition, modern society is more complex than it was in the past, which leads lawmakers to respond to new technology, safety, and social issues with more rules. While these reasons are understandable, they often result in laws that overlap, contradict one another, or add unnecessary complications. As more laws are passed without reviewing or removing old ones, the legal system becomes harder to understand and follow, creating more distance from the laws that were meant to help serve and guide. To fix this issue of too many laws, lawmakers should focus on creating better ones instead of more. One solution is to review current laws and remove ones that are old or outdated. This would make the legal system easier for citizens to understand and follow. Another important step is writing laws in clear language so that citizens know what is expected of them. Lawmakers should also think about how laws affect real people before enforcing them strictly, especially in cases that involve small or intentional mistakes. Education is another important solution. Teaching basic legal knowledge in schools can help citizens know what laws affect daily life. When people understand the law, they are more likely to follow and respect it. By making the law simpler, more thoughtful, and considerate, the legal system can better serve the people it is meant to protect. A successful legal system must balance freedom and order. Too much laws restrict personal freedom and discourage community involvement. A balanced system allows people to live freely while maintaining safety and order. The founders believed laws should protect liberty and not control every aspect of daily life. Returning to this idea requires lawmakers to focus on fairness and necessity rather than constantly expanding laws. The overabundance of law has created serious challenges for citizens, businesses, and the legal system. While excessive laws create confusion, effective laws prove that reform is possible. Laws should protect rights and promote justice. When laws become confusing, they lose their effectiveness. When focusing on clearness, accountability, and real human needs, the legal system can regain public trust and better serve the people. Thank you. I would now like to take questions from the judges.
I have a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
Alex. Okay. The first one I want to ask is in your opening narrative when you talked about Aaron Schwartz. what were the felony counts he was charged with? What was he being accused of?
So taking the documents from JSTOR is like, you have to pay 1 cent for a paper on JSTOR, and which basically means it's not free. Even though it's only 1 cent, it's like, imagine you had to buy a book and you have to pay for each page that you read. It just seems very unfair. So him taking those, like, whatever documents and whatever else he wanted from there was just, it is it's a crime because you're supposed to pay for it. Yeah, it's theft. So I don't know what the specific laws were that they charged him with, like the crimes, but I think it's just the fact that they changed it from 4 to 13, which is such like a large gap, is extremely unfair, because 4 is already it's already a lot, especially for felony counts, because even if you have 1, like in the story with John Yates, he only had 1, but in the book that I read, after he was let out of prison and after everything was done, no job was taken. So the fact that Aaron Swartz had 4 and then was changed to 13, he would not get a job. He wouldn't be allowed anywhere. His life would practically be over.
Yeah. And then my other question was, at the end, when you were talking about how they need to go through the process of reviewing the laws and keeping the ones that are necessary and removing those that aren't. What is the process for removing a law?
That is a great question, Ms. Cheney. And
I've never thought about it before.
I know that there is a process because we have been able to remove laws. I don't know exactly what people are supposed to do, but I do want to learn about that because I do want to go into law.
Me too. Will you let me know when you
I
find
will.
out? Okay.
In the Aaron Swartz case, do we know if he was aware that, did he know that he was committing felonies?
I don't think he knew he was committing a felony, but I think he knew that what he was doing was wrong.
Okay.
But he had a really good reason for what he wanted to do.
And then another question is, what happened to the fisherman? You mentioned he couldn't get another job. You were talking about Yates.
Yes.
So what was the outcome of his life after he was charged?
After he was charged, he was taken to court, and you can either plead guilty or you can go to trial. He went to trial, and that case got brought all the way to the Supreme Court, which is where Supreme Court Neil Justice heard about it and wrote the book. So he ended up spending, like, this process of going to court, rejecting the plea took years. Mm-hmm. So within that time, he did not have a job. He was in jail. I remember reading that he didn't get to spend Christmas with his family. Mm. It just seems extremely unfair, especially over such a small act. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where he is currently, but I assume that it couldn't be too well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good job. So it seems like laws were there initially. Here's what I appreciate. That you said that laws initially were like relatively straightforward and commonsensical.
Yes.
But increasingly they're complex and if you don't know everything about a particular area, you can easily get in trouble in that area. Mm-hmm. It seems like laws are mostly there today for lawbreakers. But when there's an increasing number of laws, it's hard to know how to follow the laws if you're a law abider. So I wonder if you could just talk about that for a minute.
Just law abiding?
Yeah, like what's the purpose of a law, and how's that affect people who try to abide by the laws, if there's so many?
So just my favorite thing that I've ever heard just about laws is usually laws are written in somebody else's blood, which means they're there for a very specific reason and a very good purpose. Mm-hmm. But there are some laws that just don't prove to have any, they claim to have good intentions and good reasons. I could give you a couple examples, which I will, but in Georgia, it is illegal for ducks, geese, or fawn to cross the road, which I don't understand because Are they going to charge the ducks because they can't go to court? I don't understand. There's also, I don't know if any of you believe in Bigfoot, but in Washington, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I will try my best, in Skamania County, it is a felony to harass Bigfoot, which is punishable by up to 2 years in jail or $100,000 fine. Bigfoot. People create these laws and they don't really serve such a good purpose, and it just adds to the overwhelming amount of law. And then you have to be more aware of either things that are what could be considered stupid or something that's good, like the Civil Rights Act. Like, we needed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And everything that's in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it serves a good purpose for the protection of American citizens.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So G.K. Chesterton once said, if people won't follow 10 laws, they won't follow 10,000 laws.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is a better system for developing laws than what's currently there? Do you think about that as you're writing your paper? I wonder.
So I have thought about this, which is hard to answer because America is so vast, it is so wide, there's so many people that it makes sense why we have come to the situation that we are in. But I was talking with Ms. Cole, and she was talking about PCA and how we only have like few rules, which if you could help me out here. I don't remember, it was like if it has to be like honorable,
Obedient,
and respectful.
and responsible.
And responsible, which it makes sense because if your like actions or if what you're doing don't follow that, it becomes easier to like not control but like have more of a better system. And I think we have a great system here at PCA, but it's hard to apply a school system to a nation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Alex, you did a great job. I commend you for persevering. The senior thesis project, you and all of your classmates have done an excellent job. One of the things I appreciated about your paper is that you took a really large, complex issue, law in America, but you also included a local angle in your paper about the TERFA Medicaid option. Could you talk a little bit about how you found that and how you learned about that? Because I think it's a great example here locally of how you can take a law that affects families in our community and it became better the way that laws were intended to be written.
So as I was writing my paper, and I talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it made me think more about how laws affect me personally, because I am also an American citizen. And like what I say in this paper is I want everyone to understand laws that affect them. And then I was thinking about myself, and I was thinking, I live in Shreveport, and I just looked up online, like what are some like helpful laws in Shreveport, and I came across Catherine Smitherman. And I thought that was just an amazing example because it really did help families just locally.
It seems to be a little difficult. I love the idea of having a common sense approach to law, and even like you just said it would be difficult to take even just the simple kind of rules that we have at our small school and apply it to the nation in general, because it's a large, complex organization. I mean, it's huge, you know. So how could you talk more about how do you propose or think about that balance between because even the Smitherman law is a very niche thing, like it's a very specific thing and a very complex situation with how, you know, dealing with children. So how do you balance like common sense, the common sense directive that you're talking about, and then addressing very complex problems that exist in our society?
Okay, so between common sense and the complex laws, I believe that enforcement from authorities is the underlying issue. Because a lot of the times, those laws, even though there are so many of them and they could be so niche, as you say, they serve a good purpose, and I don't think a law that is like the one that Catherine Smitherman helped to support I don't think that should be something that we forget about or get rid of. But I think it should just be enforced correctly, and I think it has been enforced correctly, which serves as a good example. But looking at laws like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it becomes apparent that the issue is the enforcement instead of the law itself.
Yeah, that's what I thought about when I thought about the lemonade stand. I was like, because I wrote down the question: is this a matter of the law being poorly written or the enforcement of the law being misapplied? And it sounds like what you're saying
Yes.
is maybe the law being misapplied. Thank you.
So I think what your message is, just overall, is micromanaging a country doesn't work.
Yes.
And I guess there's a trickle down effect with that too. Micromanaging any, kind of organization, it doesn't foster innovation, it doesn't foster entrepreneurship, and that's it sounds like it would be debilitating. I know this. I hope Kat was watching. She would be so proud of you. You just did. I'm so glad that you chose this topic. You delivered it beautifully. Thank you very much.